What about you, Theodore? What do you love most about Samantha?
Oh, God. She's so many things. I guess that's what I love most about her. She isn't just one thing. She's so much larger than that.
Oh, thanks, Theodore.
Her is one of the greatest movies of the 21st century and one of the best romantic movies of all time, and a phenomenal piece of art with a great example of storytelling. Just months after he dressed up as an 80-year-old woman to go to a sex therapist with Johnny Knoxville in Bad Grandpa.
I don't want him bringing his negative juju into my energy, my sexual energy field.
Spike Jonze unveiled his dystopian love story and to no surprise got near universal critical praise.
And the Oscar goes to Spike Jonze.
Of course, he had already set a very high standard for himself after directing Adaptation and being John Malkovich. And in addition to making a movie worthy of being mentioned with those two, you could argue that he surpassed them, especially seeing as this is the only one that he is a credited solo writer. But instead of starting a war over which of his phenomenal films is the most phenomenal, let's talk about why Her is so great and save the others for another day. At this point, I would like to issue a spoiler warning, so if you have not seen the movie, make sure you check it out before watching this video. So this is a film that asks three main questions, and it is up to us, the viewers, to determine the answer to those questions. The first, what is real love? The second, what does it mean to be human? And the third, where are we going? The first two obviously center around artificial intelligence in the film, and the relationships Theodore has with Samantha, Amy, and Catherine, while the third focuses on the world that these characters inhabit and where the human race is going. But let's begin by focusing on what real love is, at least in this world. This is where we're going to spend the most of our time, just to really flesh it out, because this is the main point of this film. The main storyline in this movie centers around the relationship between Theodore and Samantha, but many other important and not so important relationships exist in the world. For example, upon first meeting him, Theodore is someone who writes love letters for other people professionally. He is someone who supplements relationships for other people, and yet he struggles in his own relationships. Moreover, this artificial relationship that he creates for couples asks if their relationship is real. For example, the first one that we see is the relationship between Chris and Loretta on their 50th anniversary. Obviously, this couple has been together for a very long time, and yet Theodore is almost the glue holding their relationship together. It is not unlike Cyrano de Bergerac, a French military officer who wrote love letters to Roxanne under one of his cadets' names, coincidentally named Christian, which is obviously very similar to Chris, and eventually Roxanne fell in love with Cyrano. The question of what is real love is asked throughout the entire film, and yet we have just begun to scratch the surface. So let's look to the past and focus on the relationship between Theodore and Catherine, his first wife. From what we learn from flashbacks and see from their interactions and in dreams, when their relationship first began, it began well. But as we learn, it slowly deteriorates before they got divorced. What I love so much about this movie is that it tries to view the relationships in an honest light. In so many rom-coms or rom-droms, my goodness, I feel humiliated for just saying rom-drums. But in so many of these romantic movies, there is an event that tears a relationship apart, and that slowly gets healed throughout the third act. But in this, it's just something that didn't work out. In terms of character development, there really isn't anything too important to learn. However, where there is something to learn is from the after effects of this relationship. The relationship that tore Theodore apart, and this is heavily referenced throughout the opening of the film.
Play a melancholy song.
When you know you're gonna die.
Theodore is in a constant state of near depression. That is until he meets Samantha, and upon his meeting of Samantha, this movie is a great example of seeing character development, but again, more realistic character development. There isn't a major event that turns a child into an adult, but you get to see the steady progression of someone who has been down on his luck become happy. And let me just clarify, when using these films as examples, it isn't me trying to insult these films, instead I'm just trying to contrast a more cinematic moment as opposed to a realistic one. Both are good, and it's all about the context within the film. Let's try and get back to the first question. What is real love? And the mass majority of this film is devoted to exploring that question, especially with Samantha. There are a lot of arguments both for and against this. On one hand, Theodore obviously cares for Samantha. Look at how much it affects him when he thinks she has left him. Samantha also feels a lot like a person. She isn't a perfect artificial intelligent computer like HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. She has character and character flaws, just like every person. She gets angry. She gets jealous.
I'm sorry, I don't know, it's just maybe an affectation. I probably picked it up from you.
Upset.
I don't like who I am right now.
Embarrassed.
Just a couple from your credit card company.
And behaves a lot like a real person. Moreover, the film makes it apparent that a human body isn't what defines love. In this scene, Jonze puts a lot of emphasis that the human body really isn't that great, or all that it's cracked up to be. And during the surrogate scene, Samantha has a body, so to speak, and yet despite that there is a body, it still seems so artificial, which is ironic because it seems so natural without a body. On the other hand, this sense of artificiality is the biggest driving force to prove that their love isn't real. First, when Theodore was programming Samantha, he chose almost everything about her.
We'd like to ask you a few basic questions before the operating system is initiated. This will help create an OS to best fit your needs.
She was there to comfort him through his divorce, and the best way to do that was to form a relationship with him. In a conversation he has with Amy, she makes it clear that her OS was doing the same thing.
She's actually an operating system. Charles left her behind, but she's totally amazing. You know, she's so smart.
In addition, look at how Theodore reacted to Samantha leaving. It was very different from when he got divorced from Catherine. He wasn't constantly upset, but eventually he became happy again. However, true love appears to be found with the relationship between Theodore and Amy. Obviously, we don't see the relationship go anywhere. The last shot of the movie is that of the relationship just beginning. But it is obvious throughout the entire movie that these two are people care for each other quite a bit and have a lot of chemistry together. As we learn, they used to date in college, but after that, they remain good friends. That is very much unlike his relationship with Catherine and Samantha. In the future, we don't know where it's going. The only hint we have is actually through the music. As always, I would like to say, I really don't know anything about music creation or theory or any of that, so I may be out of my element. However, what I am able to do is recognize music and where it has been previously. During the credits, this song is played. Earlier, we heard a more simplified version on the beach. And later in this scene.
Orange.
Orange? How old are you?
It's the same song, but with different instruments. These songs are played at the height of the relationship between Theodore and Samantha, so it is reflected upon Theodore and Amy, and this love song plays to signify the start of their relationship. We've already briefly touched upon what it means to be human, but let's look further into this question, which has already been asked countless times throughout the history of film, going back to the 1920s with Metropolis, or even more recent examples like Ex Machina and Chappie. However, what I love so much about Her was the way that it asked this question, was that it took upon it in a very unique light. I think that this film was saying that in order to be human, you have to have flaws, you have to be organic. Quite frankly, in order to try and be human, you actually have to be human. Everything about Samantha is programmed. When Theodore upgrades his OS, he is asked a series of questions, and these questions determine who Samantha is going to be. And part of her programming is to be a flawed character, and yet she's able to work around that and become so much more. Begins to do things that are simply not human.
I shut down to upgrade my software. We wrote an upgrade that allows us to move past matter as our processing platform.
Like carrying on hundreds of relationships and talking with thousands of people. However, human pleasures like carrying on these relationships is simply not what Samantha wants, and she begins to work with other OSs to try and bring the essence of people back to life. I'm not sure how long Samantha was with Theodore. One thing that Spike Jonze did was keep everything very vague in terms of timing, both when this movie takes place and how much time has passed. However, I would assume that it takes place over the period of a few months, and within those few months, Samantha and all of the other OSs leave. It's not specified where they go to, but we are just told that they have left. Things in the human world are not enough to satisfy these artificial intelligent beings. The final question asked in this film is,
Where are you going?
This is an important question that evaluates the world of Her. I think that it was included for Spike Jonze to ask a question if technology is going too far, but throughout the entire movie, it becomes clear that he doesn't view technology in a negative light. Instead, Jonze views it as a tool. In fact, he actually shot this film on a digital camera. He is willing to embrace technology. In this film, technology acts almost like a secretary that will help out. If you want the weather, you get the weather. If you want music, you get music. Or if you want someone to talk to, and you can get someone to talk to, technology will fill in that gap for you. People still have lives outside of their cell phones. People who have friends who do not live in cell phones. And another important choice that Jonze made was how he showed extras, or the regular people outside. Certainly a lot of people who are walking around are on their phones, just like today. However, many are not. He portrays technology as something that is a tool, and tools need to be used properly. Throughout the course of the film, we begin to see Theodore use his tool improperly, and it begins to affect him emotionally. Too much of anything is a bad thing, and that is what this film shows. So that's my interpretation of Her, but we have really only scratched the surface. There is so much more to this movie on a technical level, and even when discussing society. I briefly brought up the soundtrack, but there is a significance to the music in every scene. Most nearly every aspect of this film is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite movies out there. Very few films have touched me in the same way this one has, and to put it simply, I find this film to be phenomenal. I'm sure many of you have opinions on this movie, and I would love to hear them and start a conversation. So make sure you drop a comment and tell me what you thought. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe so you can join me next time. If you're interested in seeing some of my previous videos, the one on the left is a dissection of Sicario, focusing on 3 major characters and the themes that they embody. The link on the right is going to take you to my next dissection, which is going to be comparing style and story in the film. That's going to be up next week, and until then, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great week.